Hey y'all, it's Jen, and today I have my August wrap-up video. I did manage to read 11 books this month, and I'm just going to start with my least favorite and work my way up. So I don't have any that are rated under 3 stars this month, which is fantastic, but my 3-star book is Into the Wild by John Crowker, and this is a story of a college-age student who decided that he wanted to go off the grid and pretty much changed his name, gave up all of his worldly possessions, sold everything, and disappeared. And he ended up traveling all over the United States, down into Mexico, just kind of living off the land, and his final triumph was to try and survive in Alaska, which, if you know anything about the story, you know that he ultimately did not survive, and that is this is more of a memoir based off of his known accounts with other people that he encountered, and some notes that he left, kind of like some journals, and then just kind of some speculation into his thoughts, his feelings, his whereabouts through some of the part of this. I did not enjoy it as much as what a lot of people did. I kind of thought that the young man was kind of arrogant and maybe even had some kind of mental health issues. I don't know. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't find him to be an inspiration. And I had 2 3.5-star books this month. We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. And I picked this book up solely because it fit a Pop Sugar challenge, and that was to read a book with an unreliable narrator. And if you know anything about me and anything about, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that unreliable narrator is something that I do not like. This one, however, was done really well. I did not see the twist. I knew that there was going to be one because I knew it was an unreliable narrator from the beginning. But it had some kind of emotional ties to it for me. I don't want to give any information away because I don't want to spoil it for anybody else. It was a 3.5-star book for me. I find E. Lockhart's writing is hit or miss for me, and this one is on the upper side of good for the E. Lockhart books that I have read. My next book, 3.5-star book, is My Awesome Awful Popularity Plan by Seth Rudetsky. And this is a story about a young high school boy who is gay and wants to be popular. He's on that. He's not so popular. He gets picked on a lot, and he's into musical theater, and he hangs out with the not so popular kids at first, and he wants to be popular, and he thinks being popular is what is going to change his life and make him happy. We all know how that kind of storyline goes, and this one was very predictable, and the ending felt rushed and a little forced, really. So this month I also had several 4-star reads for me. Mishling by Affinity Konar. This is a World War II story. This book follows a set of twins while they are involved and part of Joseph Mengele's The Zoo. And if you know anything about World War II Nazi Germany, Auschwitz concentration camps, you know the horrific stories that have come out about Joseph Mengele and his experiments, and they are atrocious. This story is obviously fictionalized, but it is based on accounts of the twins and the children that were considered kind of anomalies in their own rights. and the story of some of the other nurses and women and other children that survived this zoo of Joseph Mengele's. Obviously, it's not a true account, but I thought the story was really well told. You get the narration and see the horrific things that are done to these twins specifically, and how they survived, and the mentality that they kind of had to go through, and how they got out of the concentration camp, out of Auschwitz. The voice, the writing style is a little weird, and that's why it wasn't a 5-star book for me. It tends to be a little sing-songy, and it's told in a third-person voice almost, like the twins are talking about themselves in third person a lot of the times, and that just sat a little weird for me. I actually listened to this one on audio, and I thought it was done really well. And at the end of the audiobook, there's a little bit of a narration by a Q&A with the author, and that actually had more of an impact on me. You can hear the author tear up and her voice get emotional in her Q&A session at the end of this audiobook, and that actually hit me harder than anything else in this story. But again, if you know anything about me, and if you've watched my channel, you know that Nazi Germany, World War II stories are something that I am passionate about, and I love those stories because of the hope and survival and just the strength that comes out of those stories from the people that were involved. My next 4-star read was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and this is a retelling of the Odyssey, where Achilles and his partner are, and I can't remember the name of him, he's the narrator of the story and a main secondary character, but they are lovers in this story. I thought it was done very well. I was really engaged in this story. You know the story of Helen of Troy, and kind of how all that pulls in. Achilles is the son of a Greek goddess and a human Greek king, and kind of how all of that pulls together. I thought it was really well done. I have always been interested in mythology a little bit, but the stories of like the actual Iliad and the Odyssey never really held my interest, because it's in that Old English and it's an epic poem, and it's never been a style of writing I've enjoyed. But this story kind of tells it in a fictionalized way. Obviously it's all fictionalized, but it tells it it gives another perspective on it, and I really enjoyed this story. There were times that I cried through it. I was listening to it for the most part at work, and it was really hard because, my coworkers were like, "Why are you crying?" And I'm like, "My book." But, there was some tragic points, but there were some really good moral choices that are made in it as well, and I found that interesting compared to the war that's going on, and how these moral choices, the good, had an impact on Achilles and the surrounding war and those other people, the other kings and stuff that you learn about during the story. My next 4-star read was The Smell of Other People's Houses by Bonnie Sue Hitchcock. I didn't know what to expect when I picked this book up. It was available on audio from my library, and I'd remembered hearing that somebody I follow really liked the book, and I want to say that it is Chelsea from Chelsea Darling that really raved about this book, but I could be totally wrong. However, again, this was a 4-star read. This takes place in, I want to say 1960 Alaska, which is interesting because that's my second Alaska book this month. But It follows a young girl who is kind of abandoned by her mom after her father dies, and she's raised by her grandmother. And then so it follows this main character's storyline through her being a 4-year-old who just loses her dad and loses her mom because her mom has a mental breakdown after her father dies. Being 17, 18, and coming back after how it all wraps up. I don't want to give any spoilers, but I found it to be a very heart-wrenching, very authentic kind of storyline. There's other characters that are involved as well. It kind of follows a group of 4 girls, and it's told in different perspectives. I listened to the audiobook, and it actually had several different narrators in there, which I always love that because it helps give a voice to those other characters, and I do believe the chapters alternate, if I remember correctly. But I really enjoyed it. It's a contemporary young adult story, and but it was really, really well done, I thought. My next 4-star read was the Java and the Librarians Book Club of the read for the month, and that was The Girl in 6E by A.R. I believe it's Torre, Torre. This is billed as an erotic thriller, and while there are elements of eroticism and there are elements of being a mystery or a thriller, I didn't find it to be heavy in either one of those. I like erotica, and I do read a little bit of it, and while I used to really like thrillers, as I've gotten older and I live by myself, I'm a little bit of a chicken shit, and I don't do scary anymore because I'm by myself a lot at night, and then I hear every little noise and I freak myself out big time. So I don't do thrillers. But however, this one wasn't scary at all to me. It follows Diane, who is a recluse. She has locked herself away in her apartment because she wants to murder people. And so in order to keep everybody else safe from her, she's locked herself away and has become a recluse. But to earn money and have a little bit of that social interaction that everybody really needs, she is a cam girl. I actually found the cam girl side of things to be very interesting. It's almost a psychological study of, you know, what it takes to be a cam girl and the industry, and how you almost a psychological study of the people that seek out the webcam girls for pleasure. Of course, there is a little bit of a mystery in there, and I won't go into that, but just know that it could have some triggers in it for some people based on the content, but you learn early on what kind of trigger that is, and you cannot read the book the rest of the way if that, I don't want to spoil anything on this, okay? But you can also see on, you know, Goodreads or other online reviews will probably give you that information if you really want to seek that out. But again, I thought this was really well done. I found it very interesting. I listened to it on audio, and it was a pretty quick audiobook for me. I think I listened to it in a day, maybe a day and a half, and I did not find it scary. It is the first book in a series, and I do think I will continue on with it. I'm interested to see where it goes. So the rest of these books to round out my 11 books for August are all 5-star books. The first one is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, and this is a memoir of Trevor growing up in apartheid South Africa. I highly recommend this book. Trevor Noah actually is the narrator for the audio version book of it, and if you are into audiobooks at all, I definitely recommend you listen to his book on audio. But anyway, Trevor's life was not at all good growing up, but He was raised by a very strong black woman, and it is very interesting to see how his mother's influence influenced his life. It also points out the racism that was very prevalent there, not only between people of white and black descent, but also those of mixed races were also looked upon differently and treated differently, and how it affected the whole families of those people. Trevor Noah it was actually a very funny book in a lot of parts. He has a good sense of humor, and he is very good at storytelling. Even though parts of it were bad, it was still an enjoyable book. Definitely 5-star, and I definitely recommend you pick it up. My next 5-star read was Juniper Lemon's Happiness Index by Julie Israel, and this book deals with the loss of a sibling. And I have been very transparent on my channel so you all know that I know what that feels like. In this case, it was the older sister that died, and this is from the younger sister's perspective on dealing with that death. And also how her friends deal with that death and other people involved. And ultimately, it is a story about overcoming that loss and moving on with your life, and how that looks differently for a lot of people, including your parents, and how the parents deal with it. My mom has not dealt well with my sister's death at all. And the mother in this story also does not deal well with the loss of her daughter. So for me, this book was very touching because it's told from the sibling's point of view. When a family member dies, especially someone who's young, the children of that person and the parents of that person and that person's spouse or significant other are always the ones who are looked at and checked up on, and who the condolences always go out to. Being a sibling, you are often overlooked, and it is hard because for us, that is like the friend that we've had from childhood that is supposed to grow up with us and grow old with us. And suddenly, this person who is a part of your past and a part of your present is no longer a part of your future. And that's hard to deal with. Okay. So anyway, I highly recommend this book. Like I said, it was a very accurate representation for me for the emotions that you go through, the loss that you feel as a sibling, and then kind of the grieving process you go through to get past that and move on with your life. It affected me so much that I did reach out to the author, thank her for writing this book. It really was a good book, and it really helped me. It was something I needed at the time, even if I didn't realize I needed it. The next book is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven, and I also gave this one 5 stars. It deals with loss of a sibling as well, and all the emotions that you go through. It deals with depression really well. It deals with abuse, and thoughts of suicide. It deals with a lot of stuff, and the negative remarks that this gets is that it's not a good representation of of someone with depression and or bipolar. One of the main characters is actually bipolar and not just depressed, where the other main character is depressed due to being a grieving sibling. Complaints that this book receives is because people think that it's only showing these people as their mental illness and not as a whole person. But when you're in the middle of that deep set depression, or you're in your manic depressive stages that go from deep depression to extremely lively and high on life, that is who you are. You have other interests and there are other aspects to your personality, but that is what is most dominant. And I think that this book shows that representation very well. You're only getting a little glimpse into the lives of these people. And at the time that we're seeing them, that is their personality. They are in the deep throes of depression, or they're in the up and down manic depressive cycle. And I think this does show that very well with this little snippet of their life that we see. And that's all I'm going to say about it. So that wraps up my books for August and what I thought about them. If you have read any of these books, please let's chat in the comments below. Let me know what you've read and what you've thought of them. If any of these are on your TBR list, let's chat about that too. I'll be interested to see what your thoughts are once you have finished reading them as well. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, please hit that thumbs up button and click subscribe to be notified when I post more content. And if you hit that little bell button, it will actually give you a notification every time I post a video. Until next time, bye.